Let's imagine we have to work with a lot of data, and imagine that we have different variables for storing different names. So for example, I have this name variable for each of the name 1, name 2, name 3, and so on. And this actually works, but it is clunky, and you can see it won't scale very well. And when you're working on an actual application, you're going to use a lot of variables or values. And this approach won't be good for that after some time. Imagine if you use a lot of variables and you have to remember them. Let's say we have 100 variables, how you are going to remember all of them. So arrays solve that problem. And today we are going to talk about arrays, how to store, access, and manipulate list of data. And one of the most used tools in all of JavaScript and general programming is arrays. So let's see the definition of array. An array is an ordered list of values, all stored under a single variable name. So in order to create an array, we have two ways to do that. Now the first way to create an array is by using new, array, and the parentheses. And these both are the keywords, new and array. Now inside these parentheses, we are going to pass in the list of items. So in our case, it is going to be Son, it is going to be Alex, and so on. So this is one way of creating an array. And it is a little bit complicated one. So we won't be using this one in this video. Instead, what I'm going to do is create an array using a much simpler syntax, which is using square brackets. And similar to our arrays parentheses, where we passed in all the items that are going to be present in the names array, we are going to paste it here as well. Each item is separated by a comma. Now, if I console log the names array, if I go back to the browser, you can see we are able to see our array inside the console. Now, on expanding this array, you can see we have number and then colon and the actual item that we want it to be in this array. And we also have one property that is automatically available to us, that is called length. So unlike primitives, an array is a non-primitive type. It is a container that groups multiple values together, and that group itself is the value of the array. So in our case, that is this group, the square bracket. Now let's talk about how we can access items in the array. Every item in an array has a position, and it is called index. And indexes start counting from 0, not from 1. So our item where I've stored the value Hisan is stored at the index 0. And in order to access any item from the array, we have to use the square bracket after the array name, and then we have to pass in the index. And this will always give me the first index at 0. If I go back to the browser, refresh, I get back Hisan. When we expanded the array inside the console, we saw that we have a property available to us called length. And basically the length is the property that gives us the total size of the array. So in our case, we have 4 items. The total size of our array is 4. So if I do names.length, refresh, you can see 4. So the total number of items present in the array. Now similarly, in case I want to access the very last element, and we have a very long array, and we don't know what index it would be. So what we can do is, inside the square bracket, we can say names.length -1. And -1 is there because indexes start at 0. So the last element in this array would be at index 3, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now if I go back to the browser and refresh, you can see we are printing James. Okay, so now let's talk about how we can add items and remove items from the array. And for this, I'm going to talk about 4 methods and then a simple way that we can use as well. Now similar to how we are accessing the element in the array using indexes, we can also override the value at a specific index. For example, in names, I want to replace the first value, which is index 0, to something like Aaron. And now if I print my array, go back to the console, you can see the first element is replaced with Aaron. Now this is one very simple way of overriding elements. But we have 4 methods available in case we want to add the element at the end of the array, or remove from the end of the array, or we want to add the item or element at the start of the array. So let's talk about those 4. Now in case we want to add an element or item at the end of the array, for example after James, what we can do is name.push. So this push method is going to push the item at the end of the array, and it takes in an argument, the value we want to add. So let's add Aaron here, console log, and if I refresh, you can see Aaron is added at the end of the array. Now push adds at the end of the array, and then we have a method called pop, which doesn't take any argument, and which basically removes the last element of the array. So if I comment this out, we have our original array, and if I'm going to call the pop, it would remove the James. Refreshing in the browser, and you can see we are left with 3 values only. Now this was to add or remove the element or the item from the end of the array. Now in case we want to add the item, add a new item at the start of the array, or remove the item from start of the array, we have 2 methods for that as well. And the first one I'm going to talk about is called unshift. So if I do names.unshift, and let's use our Aaron example, go back to the browser, you can see Aaron is added at the start of the array, not at the end of the array. So unshift basically adds the element at the start of the array. Now similar to unshift, we have shift, and it doesn't take any argument. And what it basically does is just removes the first element of the array. So if I comment this out, we would be left with Alex, Jones, and James. Let's go back to the browser and see. So if I hit refresh, you can see it is printing Alex, John, and James. Now these were simple methods just to add or remove items from start or end of the array. Now there are 2 more methods that I think you should know about from the start. And the first one is called includes. And we have used includes before as well in the string video. So we would use the include in string to check if a character or a word is present inside the string or not. And the case is similar here as well. So what we can do is names.include, and then the argument is going to be the value we want to check whether it is present in the array or not. So in our case, I'm going to say Hisan. And in order to see the actual result of this, we have to do this inside the console log. Because remember, includes return only true or false, a boolean. So let's go back to the browser, hit refresh, and you can see it is printing true. Now if I change it to something like Hisan Naveed, refresh, it returns false, because this item is not available in our array. Now another method that I want to talk about here is called map. So this is a very important method, and you will probably use this a lot. So what map allows us to do is basically go through each of the item in the array one by one. So for example, in our case, let's say we want to print all the names that we have inside our names array. So what we can do is names.map. This is the method, and it takes an argument, and this argument is going to be a callback. So remember callback? I did mention it at that time that we are going to use a lot of callbacks when we are actually building an application. So we can do it like function and this, or we could also use the arrow function here. And for that, the syntax is this. Now this callback receives a parameter, and we can name it whatever we want to. Basically, it is going to be the item of the array. Since we are dealing with names, the standard is to use the singular version of the array. So that is going to be name. Now let's just add a simple console log here. And now if I go back to the browser and refresh, you can see we are printing all the names inside the array. Now there are plenty of useful methods available for arrays, but we won't go deeper into that, and I don't want to talk about all of them as they can make things complex to start. But in case you want to learn more on your own and you want to go ahead with that, then you can explore some methods like reduce, reverse, sort, and filter. And do not worry if you don't understand them entirely, because we will be using them and exploring them as we progress further in the future videos. So now quickly, I want to show you how this works under the hood. And here's something that surprises a lot of people. Arrays in JavaScript are technically a special kind of object. Behind the scene, each index is really just a label. To basically visualize this, I have this image for you. So you can see that each of the index is just a label for the value, similar to a property name in the object. And JavaScript automatically keeps track of the length property that we have available on the array. And this is also why if I try type of names, which is our array, we get back object, not the array. And again, this is because arrays are a specialized version of object type, built specifically for order list. So you have to remember this. Array is not a different data type. It is a specialized version of object. And this is enough for now for arrays. Now let's talk about loops in the next video.